Hey guys, what's going on? So in the video today, I'm extremely excited because in today's video, I'm going to be unboxing and talking about my new pickup from Grantstone. This is going to be the Grantstone Brass Boot in Earth Waxy Commander. So let me start out by talking about Waxy Commander. So I did a little bit of research on it to refresh my memory. My first experience with Waxy Commander was when Truman ran it in a color called China Blue Waxy Commander. Now those ended up being too big for me. I took a size 9 in those, 9D, and it was just too much volume. I'm going to be doing a video here soon talking about what I realized my epiphany with sizing is. You've got high volume lasts and low volume lasts, and I have a high volume foot, which is why I think I've been sized incorrectly my whole life by like shoe salesmen and things like that. Knowing the difference, like listening to the Stitch Down podcast with Ron Ryder recently, Ron Ryder really opened my eyes to, it's not so much Brannock measurements and length and width, has more so to do with volume, not so much dimensions. Being that I have a high volume foot, I've always had trouble with especially the sleeker lasts. You know, it's like, oh, well, your foot fits in there, it should work. It's like, yeah, but it crushes this area, it crushes my instep. And so anyways, I've prepared a script for a video that I'm going to be doing about discussing high volume last, low volume last. Anyways, this brass boot is a very high volume last. This is called the Floyd last. It's got raised walls in the vamp here, a very generous fitting last, nice and wide. And so I actually decided, because I had a conversation with Randy when I was actually visiting the Grantstone team, and I mentioned this in my Tan Essex Brass Boot video as well, that I actually decided to play around with sizes a little bit more. So I went and I took an 8E in these. So this is a size 8E. It's down a half from what I normally do in Grantstone, which is 8.5D. So you go down a half, up a width, and what that does is that creates a little bit more of a bespoke fit. And I took pictures, like I compared the sizes. These are my brass boots in Maduro Shell Cordovan and my brass boots in Saddle Tan Veg. I always like to compare the right boot to the right boot, left boot to the left boot. There we go, 8E, 8.5D. And on first glance, it's like, yeah, that looks very similar. That looks extremely similar, because what happens is I could tell the volume in this is just going to be a little bit reduced from the 8.5D, just a little bit, but I think the width is the same. I think the length is just a hair shorter. Now what Randy was telling me was that when you go from an 8.5 to an 8, the length goes down a little bit, but when you go up in width from there, the length actually increases back a little bit more. And so what he was saying is, like, the length in an 8D compared to an 8E, the 8E is going to be a little bit longer, because as you increase width, the length bumps up just a hair. And so I thought that was interesting, and that's why we're seeing this here, 8.5D, 8E. I want to say the length, just by my eye here, the length on the 8E is just a little bit shorter, but not a full size shorter, I would say, compared to the 8.5D. And this is why, talking to my friend Mario, Boot Reaper on Instagram, check out his Instagram account, he's got great shoes. He was saying he'll do this too. So in a situation where you'd want to try a new size is if you're trying to create more of a bespoke fit to your foot, Randy actually had me go down a full size, so 7.5, down 2 half sizes from my typical 8.5D. He grabbed me a 7.5 triple E, so down 2 half sizes, up 2 widths. And what that did was that, like, I was looking at the boot, I was like, this is weird. It looks like my 8.5D. It visually looks like it. I put my foot in there and it felt like it too. It was just a little shorter, a little bit more ergonomical. So it's not something for everybody, but I would say it's cool if you're going for like a different feel. And so another reason where you'd want to try this is if your size, say on the Grantstone website, they do limited runs in certain leathers. If you happen to get there a little late and you find that your size is sold out, you could go down a half size and up a width, and you're in luck. You can make it work that way. If there's a run you really wanted, but your typical size is sold out, you can try that, and it will work. In most, probably 99% of cases, it's going to work out just fine. I'm very happy with this. I'm very happy to be trying out a new size. You know, I could just tell visually looking at a boot, you know, whether or not it's going to work for my foot, and this I could definitely tell is going to work for my foot very well. Typically, in my brass boot, I have about an inch space in front of my toe, about an inch. And so now I'll have more like 7/8 of an inch in front of my toe. Like, it's gonna be very negligible, but it should be the same width and everything too. So I'm excited to try these out. New sizing dimension, new way to experience all of Grant Stone's sizing dimensionality. I think another thing that is important to bring up is when we're talking about a half size, we're not talking about a significant increase or decrease when moving between half sizes. We're talking about, it's very small. It's like 1/16 of an inch, I think, in most cases. I think Mark Albert, he was saying when you go up to a double E in his last, it only adds like 1/16 of an inch compared to a D width boot. Now that said, it's increasing the volume by a lot. So like what Ron Ryder was talking about in the Stitch Down Shoecast was, yeah, you're increasing the dimension, the measurement of the boot a little bit, but it's not so much that, it's that you're actually increasing a lot of the volume. And so if your foot eats up a lot of that volume on the inside of the boot, by sizing up a width, it'll relieve a lot of that tension. And you know, that's what always caused me foot pain growing up, wearing tight fitting shoes. Yeah, especially on my instep there, it was just too low a volume for my foot type. And so that's why I'm really happy that these brands like Grant Stone really design a really well fitting last. Good footwear isn't just about looking good, it's about feeling good. I'm not a doctor, I don't like to give medical advice, but I do have opinions. And my opinion is that when you impede your blood flow through your foot especially, it can cause deleterious damage to your health. I think your blood needs to flow freely through your body, and I think if you're wearing like shoes that are too tight, I don't know what that could lead to. Maybe blood clotting, maybe circulatory issues. But when your foot is not free to breathe and splay your toes out and move around inside the boot, because the foot is a very complicated mechanism of your body. I don't know how many muscles and bones, but it's got a lot going on in there. It's got to be able to move and contort. That's where I always ran into issues, right? I was always kicking my shoes off because I couldn't stand to have them on. Couldn't wait to take them off after work, and it's like, you shouldn't feel that way. And now that I've found a sizing and lasts that I really like, I keep my shoes on all day. I don't want to take them off, in fact. I love it. So anyways, let me talk about this Waxy Commander leather a little bit. These look black, but they're not black. They're a very dark brown, but in certain lights they look black. Now where these first caught my eye was on Instagram. There's a guy I just started following. I'll leave a link to his Instagram account below. His name is Teik, that's Teikoh. Super nice guy, small business coach and consultant, providing clear step-by-step online training on how to grow your small business starting from your vision. www.teiko.com. Super nice guy. Anyways, he's got a great boot collection. He's into Red Wing, Alden. I see a lot of Parkhurst. I see Thursday. I see Grant Stone. Anyways, I see this guy out of nowhere starts posting, like I wasn't even really considering these Earth Waxy Commanders, because I thought, oh, well, I have the Shell Cordovan Maduro brass boot, so that checks that box, right? Wrong. Incorrect. So I was looking at Teiko's page. He bought these Earth Waxy Commanders and took them on a hike. He was posting pictures of them like all day, and I'm like, oh wow, those look awesome. He's like hiking around, going on adventures in them. And so after the hike, they were all muddy, and I'll include a picture. They looked freaking awesome. Now in certain lights, they do look black, but in other lights, they look brown, like a very dark brown though. Now these will lighten up as time goes on, but I've always really liked the look of the black chamois Indy, the Indy boot in black chamois, or the Roy boot in earth chamois. Alden uses what's called earth chamois sometimes. I've seen that in some iterations, and I just thought that this Earth Waxy Commander looked so similar to that. So I'll include pictures. I don't own any earth chamois myself, but I've always been in love with like the Alden Indian earth chamois, earth reverse chamois Indy boot, and the plain toe iterations, Earth Reverse Chamois, just incredible on a crepe sole. I remember reading about Earth Chamois. It looks black, but it's not black. It's just an incredibly rich, dark brown. That's what this is. So the Earth Chamois, that's going to be Horween's iteration of kind of the same thing. Now the chamois is going to be a heavily waxed rough out. This Waxy Commander is a shrunken micro suede. So it's a suede and it's shrunken by 25%, and then it's waxed. So it's kind of like chamois in a lot of respects, not as oily, more waxy to the feel, but in appearance, kind of similar. The Waxy Commander is going to look a little bit more smooth, especially when they're new. The Earth Chamois is going to definitely get roughed up, hairier as time goes on. In fact, I can grab mine. All right, so these are my Alden Roy boots in reverse tobacco chamois, and as you can see, it's like a chocolate brown color, and it's just got crazy texture, rough out, just really rad, awesome nap happening here. That's not going to happen on this shrunken suede because it's going to be a lot more fine. It's not going to reveal its nap nearly as dramatically, but it's going to patinate in a similar way. It's going to take a similar path to the chamois leather. For that reason, like, I saw Teik's pictures and I just kept thinking about these Earth Waxy Commanders, and I thought, dang it, I've always wanted the Indy in this color, and in fact, I have an Indy in a smooth chamois. Here's my Alden Indy boot. This is called Vintage Nubuck, but it's actually a smooth chamois leather. I believe it's called tobacco, but there you go. 8D, this is the right boot, 8.5D to 8E Grantstone. I think the Aldens are just a little bit longer, but I think that's an aesthetic length. I don't think that that's a functional length. And what do I mean by that? Well, all right, here's the brass boot, 8.5D, Alden True Balance 8.5D. And the brass boot, so I don't know if you can see that, but the Alden toe appears just a hair longer, but the length is in this like slope, and this slope isn't where your toe is gonna be. And so actually this slope could carry on a lot longer if you think about it, because it's like this very tip is like a superficial piece of the toe box, whereas in this brass boot you could get your toes all the way up to this, because you see how it doesn't have that same slope. It's sort of walled off right up to the front. So you could, if your foot was long enough, you could get your toes basically all the way to the tip of this, whereas on the Aldens you could not, because this very edge is going to be more, it's going to be more superficial. So this is splitting hairs, but for the most part I always look at where the heel begins and where the toe ends, and I always compare the right boot to the right boot and the left boot to the left boot, and you can see the Aldens are they just extend just a little bit further, but the fit feels about the same, if that makes sense. This brass boot has a structured toe, has raised walls. Obviously the fit is gonna feel a little bit more generous in the brass boot in the front, but like in terms of like the Ottawa, the Grantstone Ottawa boot, this is a good comparison. The Grantstone Ottawa has that unstructured toe. You can see on the Alden True Balance, I want to say that the Alden just looks just a smidge longer. Actually, it's not really. Like these are pretty comparable. Yeah, the Alden just looks like it's just a smidge longer. I see the Grantstone toe just sort of, it slopes down. It doesn't slope like on the Alden toe. It's like a clean slope, whereas on the Grantstone toe it curves and cuts off. Point being, how it's going to feel on your foot isn't going to make the biggest difference. It's actually just a cosmetic thing. Some things with the boots, certain portions of the boots are going to be more cosmetic than functional, and that's what I think what we're looking at here. Anyways, let's get back to these. So here we go. Here's the brass boot in 8E, and here's the Ottawa boot in 8.5D. Nice little size comparison there. So yeah, I mean, to me, by my eye, and I'll include pictures, these kind of look like, to me, the same size, just a little bit different. I'll do update reviews as time goes on and talk about the difference, if any, as I wear these, but I always like to do my initial thoughts video and kind of get my thoughts out as to, you know, talk about why I got these, talk about the influences that played into why I got these, because yeah, Teik, like he was like, his posts were like the straw that broke the camel's back. I always wanted an Indy in Earth Reverse Chamois, and I'm really excited. I'm gonna wear these really hard, and I can't wait to see how they patinate over time. Over time they'll lighten up and they'll expose the texture, the outer wax will wear off. It'll form really cool patinas, really cool scratches, and I'm not gonna baby these, and I'm definitely not gonna condition these anytime soon. And then, oh yeah, here's another example of Waxy Commander. So these are my Grant Stone Edward boots in waxed tobacco. And as you can see, the patina is dramatic, especially on this boot here. So again, with the Waxy Commander to the chamois is going to have a lot more wild, a lot more chunky, hairy nap, and the Waxy Commander is going to be smoother. It's still going to patinate pretty awesome. It's just going to start to look more like a suede, less like a rough out, if that makes sense. And yeah, so I thought the tobacco Wax Commander was a dark brown. This is super dark in comparison. Look at that. And there we go. Edward boot, 8D, brass boot, 8E. Yeah, so you could just see the size comparison there. I mean, try to compare sizes. So yeah, can't wait to start wearing them. And not to mention, you know, if you sign up for Stitch Down, you get 10% off Grant Stone purchases, which also helps the bank. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to say. Sorry this drug out so long, but that's kind of what I do. I'm a boot nerd. I love talking boots. I love comparing boots. I love talking sizing. Please leave me your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever played around with the reduction in length, increase in width thing? And if so, how did that work out for you? Anyways, you can follow me on Instagram. I'll be posting pictures of these as I wear them. My username is AeroSurferLV. And anyways, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I will see y'all in my next video.